even if the country is in an economic crisis, even if you have the COVID crisis hitting hard the country, the first priority of the regime is to buy weapons.
Dear friends, welcome to another edition of Forum 2000 Online Chat. I'm Arzu Gaybullah, and joining me today is Andréa Ngombet Maleva to discuss elections in the Republic of Congo, which took place on March 21st, this Sunday. Andréa, welcome to the Forum 2000 Chat. It's great to have you join us today.
Thank you for the invitation.
Andréa is a civil society leader and one young world ambassador. He is an advocate for democracy, rule of law, and open government, among many other issues. And he's also presidential candidate. He did plan to run for these elections, but he pulled out in favor of the other opposition candidate that we'll be talking about today. So I'm going to jump straight into the questions. And obviously the question that I wanted to ask you first was about the election process on March 21st. And before I came on here today, I was catching up on news and trying to see whether the results were out, but they just were announced literally as we sat down to talk. So perhaps we could talk a little bit about the election result, whether it was surprising, what you think of it, but also a little bit about in the run-up to the election. Already ahead of the voting day, critics argued that the current president, Denis Sassou Nguesso, was seeking to extend his 36-year reign. News reports said that there was heavy military presence on the voting day on the streets, that independent observers were blocked from monitoring the vote count, and rights activists were targeted for criticizing the electoral process. So the results are out. Given all these different violations and reports, what's going to be happening now? What are your expectations, and what the election results tell us about the election in the country?
What the election results tell us is that the regime is in a hurry, because they used to take 5 days, even 2 weeks before announcing the result. But since Mr. Kolela, which was the main opponent of the incumbent president, just passed away of COVID-19, they were in the hurry to publish something because the population was impatient of knowing what are the outcomes. But the outcomes are what we all expected, because we know how they work. So they gave a very huge score to the incumbent president, and they say that the other are disqualified, so there won't be a second round of election. Why they want this form of result? It's because in the Congolese constitution you have one article, the Article 17, that said if a candidate decedes 1 day before the first round, the election need to be cancelled. And if he decedes and he was qualified for the second round of the election need to be postponed and redo 19 days after. So publishing the result very quickly, and a result that said that the incumbent, despite his very bad ruling malgovernance he was doing for the late 36 years, won the election directly, is a way for them to continue to grab the power in the Republic of Congo.
So they're going to keep the reins in their own hands.
Exactly.
You actually answered the other question I had, and that was that article in the Constitution.
Okay.
But when I was reading it, it seemed that the Constitution stipulated that an election can be delayed if a candidate dies or is unable to participate in the vote, not during the election, but ahead of the election.
Exactly.
But you just clarified that they could have postponed the election, but they didn't, specifically because they were in a hurry, or they?
No, they could, but it they cook the result. They always cook the result. It's not something which come out of the ballot box. They say that if they put a result that say the incumbent president didn't win directly, and there is a second round of election between the incumbent and any other opponent, and since the one of the candidate decide, the election needs to be postponed. So
and I'm sorry to clarify, there was
yes, it was not in their favor to say that in the result, Mr. Kolela was qualified for a second round of the election.
Right, and there were 6 candidates running against him. 7 candidates.
7. Six, including himself. So sorry.
Right. 6 candidates running against him. And what has been their reaction? I mean, the results just came in, as far as I understand. What has been the overall response among the opposition candidates? Are they going to protest the election results? What are the next steps for the opposition in this particular case?
Ahead of the result, Mr. Nzon, which is one of the main opponents too, he already claimed that he won't accept the result if it said that the incumbent won directly. And also the party of the late Mr. Kolela said also that they won't accept any kind of result unless they can see the vote by each bureau by each bureau. So since we know the political system in Congo won't let them see the result, some of them say that they will go in front of the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court in the Republic of Congo is directed by the same guy who just put the result out, Mr. Henri Bouka, Judge Henri Bouka. So Judge Henri Bouka is both the head of the National Electoral Commission and also head of the Supreme Court. So, and also is also a sympathizer of the ruling party. So it's very hard to have the laws enforced by such a guy.
So thank you for clarifying that. It's fascinating. I mean, obviously, this is not the first country where we're seeing an election that is where there are mass violations being reported, and obviously the results are not as surprising, especially among the civil society and opposition expecting such results. My next question is going to be about the internet shutdowns that were reported. This is not the first time we are witnessing internet shutdown in Congo. According to Keep It On coalition that focuses on internet shutdowns globally and tracks it, they issued a statement that said just hours before the polls were set to open on March 21st, the Republic of Congo implemented a complete internet shutdown, impacting all broadband and mobile internet connections, as well as SMS messaging. The coalition stressed that the same thing happened in 2015, ahead of protests to oppose the extension of the presidential term, and also in 2016 during the presidential election. Especially at the time, the reason for this disruption was, according to the government, to stop the illegal publication of the results. Now, internet shutdowns cost countries millions of dollars, and there are reports about this. There are different mechanisms to calculate how much internet shutdowns cost. And in this particular case, this is not the first time that's happening. How much do you think this fact actually is understood in the country, and how much of it being a concern for the current leadership, and whether they think this could be a tool in the hands of the opposition to challenge the government for doing this? What has been the previous response of the government to internet shutdowns as well? If you could please elaborate on all of these different cases that we've seen this happen before.
So the first thing we must say is that internet shutdown in Congo is now part of a tradition. And Congo was one of the first countries in the world to use that technique. The first one in Africa was Burundi, and then it was Congo-Brazzaville. And they use that technique because they don't have yet the technology to filter. the internet. They are trying to acquire the kind of technology the people of the Republic of China got, the firewall,
The Great Wall, yeah,
the
firewall.
Great Firewall. So they are really trying hard to have such a technology, but they are not yet there. And when they will be at that level, it won't be necessary for them to cut the internet. So for them, the cost of cutting internet is small compared to the willing to grab the power and to maintain the Congolese population outside of any democratic change. And this is how they think. And they also say that the sky won't fall. So we cut the internet and sky won't fall. Activists, keep it on, whatever, you can sign whatever you want, the sky won't fall. It's our country, our sovereignty. We do as it please. And our main focus is security. So when you think about Congo Brazzaville and regime like this, you must think about North Korea or the late East Germania. So it's the same way of thinking. First comes security, then you think about economy, and even when you think about economy, they own every private company in the country. So the one losing money is themselves, so they don't care about it. And also that money, and Congo's economy is at 19% the oil companies, and there is three main oil companies: Total from the French company, Eni, which is an Italian company, and Perenco, which is a British and French company. So those three companies can work without internet because they take oil offshore. So the ruling party and the government, they really don't care about the impact of shutting down internet. So it just for them, it's just a new tool in their repressive arsenal.
And have there been any cases or reports of specific surveillance technology that the government has purchased over the years? Do they use DPI? I mean,
not yet, inspection, or the thing they really test it was during the protest in 2015. They buy new public lighting system with camera on, Huawei camera, of course. So they try at every not checkpoint, but at the corner of street to put some public lighting with camera who can scan the face, and so
face technology, yes. Right?
And when they arrest someone, they can check the images of a protest and if he were there or not, and also it was a way for them to pay their debt to the people of China, since we know that the Huawei system was trying to improve the facial recognition on African face, because it's one of the main challenges of the artificial intelligence all over the world, having a way to train your facial recognition system on African faces, and the one who will be able to do that very accurately will lead the market, because the actual face recognition system don't really know how to scan a face from an African descent guys. So this is a main challenge. They use that specific technique. They also they were in contract with a specific company from Israel called
Alot.
Not Alot. It was
there are a few.
One specific called Athena Mer Group, which was capable to crack WhatsApp, and also if you are calling to have a kind of triangulation, and they were the one acting when they capture one opponent called Mr. Okombi Salisa, who was hidden after the previous election, and then he was calling a media, and they located him, and they were able to send his coordinate specific coordinate to the government, and then the government came and seized him, and he surrendered himself. So
that's a common tactic used by
exactly.
specific regimes to target opposition activists and rights defenders and whatnot. And I have one other question, and that question concerns Azerbaijan, of all countries, and a recent investigation report that was published by the OCCRP, Organized Crime Corruption Reporting Project, that exposed how Azerbaijan was selling weapons to Congo. And I would like to hear how this was received in the country, especially among the opposition, among the civil society, whether it had any, obviously didn't have an impact on the election results, as we're seeing from what you're telling us, but what does this mean for the country? First of all, what does it mean for the civil society? And also in the long term, what does it tell us about the way the government is headed at this moment, especially with these investigations and exposés?
The report of OCCRP was critical because it allowed the Congolese people to understand fully the nature of the regime, because we live in the country, sometimes you lose track, and for years or so we tracked the expense of the government, and it was a common knowledge that the first budget of the Congo was the weapon budget, but it was hard to know where they are buying the weapon, what they are buying, how the weapon come in the country. So it was like just a urban legend in Congo, in Congolese opposition and political discussion. But with that specific report of OCCRP, we know the networks where the government spend the money to buy weapons, what kind of weapon they buy. Those weapons are for which faction of the security apparatus. And we see in the report that all the weapons are delivered to the Republican Guard, which is the elite corps that protect directly the president. So the weapons are not for the military apparatus generally, but is directly for the president's guard. So you see that the regular military, what we call the Republican Army, have no weapons, but the personal guard of the president is heavily harmed. So this is one way to read the report. The second way to read the report is to see that every time we come close to an election, the government increases the spending for weapons, even if the country is in an economic crisis, even if you have the COVID crisis hitting hard the country, the first priority of the regime is to buy weapons and to import the weapons. So you see the structure of the regime, and it will allow us in the future to ask for a kind of ban, because you can't be heavily in debt and bankrupt and then just spend your money buying weapons. That is something not good in that scheme. And also in the report, we see that for 30 years now, Congo Brazzaville didn't fill up the form saying that the country is importing weapon, this kind of weapon or whatever. So when you see and have a document the detail of the weapon they buy, you have many grenade and submunition device. So some of them are banned for countries to hold. So we think that if we have a lawyer, a specific lawyer specialized in those kind, we can also prosecute the country, because they are buying stuff they normally not allowed to have. So this is a way to read the report. And of course, it was a way for us and other therapy to show the real face of those kind of regime we have in Congo Brazzaville.
Thank you once again for joining Forum 2000 online chat, for coming online and talking about the election results and the future. Thank you.